Have you ever had the opportunity to promote your business on somebody else's podcast? Watch this video for my 5 tips on how to be a great, epic, fantastic, amazing guest on somebody else's podcast. Because if you're going to go on somebody else's podcast, then be great at it. For the best leadership tips, entrepreneurship advice, and subconscious success strategies to help you stand out fearlessly, build your empire, and crown yourself, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell, bing, so that you're notified every Tuesday and Friday when a new video goes live. I'm Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and after over 200 interviews on other people's podcasts and having over 100 guests on our podcast, The Princess and the Bee, I have seen what separates the great guests, the ones that leave you begging for more, the ones that make you want to subscribe and follow their brand and be a part of everything that they're creating, and being a good guest. As you may have heard, you gotta surrender the good to be great. Here is why I encourage you that if you are blessed with the opportunity to go on somebody else's podcast, that you don't just be a good guest, you be a great guest. Because the podcaster is blessing you with 2 things that they have spent their time building. 1, their own personal time to do the interview with you. And 2nd, the time of their community. They are blessing you with a platform that is putting you in front of their community that they have built around their podcast or around their business or around their brand. And that is an honor that you should take very, very seriously. So if you're going to go on their podcast, going on somebody else's podcast and just being all like, I know I'm amazing. Here's why you should totally work with me. I'm going to make it all about me. That does not a great guest make. Because a podcaster is blessing you with their time personally to record the podcast and their community and exposure to their community, that means that you are in a place of trust with that podcaster. So respect their choice to have you come on as a podcast guest and respect their community by serving them. So first, in respecting the podcaster's time, don't make the mistake of doing the constant reschedule dance. That gets so irritating to a podcaster. Now, I understand as a mom of 2 young boys, rescheduling can happen. But do your best to keep your commitments and your appointments so that you respect the podcaster's time. Rescheduling more than once takes time, sometimes money if they're paying somebody else to schedule for them, and effort on their part. It can decrease the experience of having you on. Remember, having you onto their podcast is the experience of a beautiful relationship that you're building. So respect that relationship and keep your commitments and show up and be on time and show up for your appointment. Because once you show up to the appointment, to that fabulous time when you will record a podcast interview, here are the 5 tips to be a great guest on that podcast interview. Tip number 1, and this may seem obvious, but know what you're talking about. Know who the podcaster's audience is. Know what you're going to be talking and how you're going to serve that audience. For example, I go on a lot of entrepreneurship podcasts. With my private coaching, I serve entrepreneurs, the leaders, the visionaries, the founders who are doing anywhere from $250,000 to about $4 million a year in their business. And because of that, there are different problems that they're facing. Now, with my programs like Communication Queens and some of my other lower cost programs, some of those programs serve entrepreneurs who are in the 5 figures and low 6 figures stage. There's different audiences for your products and programs, and there's different audiences for the entrepreneurship style podcast. So if I'm going onto a podcast that's all about the solopreneur, starting your business, building that confidence, I know that that stage of business ownership is more geared toward talking about creating an amazing offer. It's about creating the confidence and overcoming imposter syndrome and dealing with the subconscious success strategies that you have around leadership versus an established entrepreneurship podcast that's speaking more toward entrepreneurs who have small teams or teams up to like 50 employees. They're dealing with things like conscious leadership, team management, productivity in a different way that the solopreneur is handling it. So by knowing what you're going to talk about, know the audience who you're speaking to. Just like if you're going on to a spirituality podcast and you're speaking about manifestation, there's a big, big difference between talking about the basics of law of attraction and then talking about the holographic universe. There's a massive learning gap that you need to know where is that podcaster's audience fitting in to what it is that you talk about. Tip number 2, be mic and camera ready. So down below, I use currently the Apogee mic for recording. It is not currently the one that I'm using now for this video, but for podcasts, this is the mic that I use. I've also used a Blue Yeti, and multiple other podcasts, which I can leave in the description below. These are all USB mics, which are very easy and simple and easy if you're just going on as a guest, but have a proper mic. Don't use the mic that's built into your computer. Have a proper mic, and then also be camera ready. So not all podcasts are video podcasts, but first impressions matter. And so how you show up, if you show up like looking all frumpy and like you're still like getting your lipstick together, you may not look as professional as someone who has got some, composure, maybe a little lip gloss, maybe, you can have your lip gloss be popping, like have your hair looking nice, be presentable so that even if they don't use the video from the podcast, you at least feel confident in your expertise as a guest coming on and feel confident in looking somebody in the eye. Just like you wouldn't really show up to a first date in like your sweatpants and like kind of like looking all funky. Like you're going to want to make that first impression, and first impressions do matter. So even if the video is not being used, even if it's not a video podcast per se, show up with intention, put a little effort into the look. I'm not saying you have to wear heaps and heaps of makeup. You don't even have to wear makeup at all, but at least have some intentionality between the dress, the hair, the facial complexion, maybe shower, do whatever it is that you feel good, that you can know that you can show up and not only look good, but you feel good in that space, because you will have a different level of confidence in showing up when you feel and look good than when you kind of roll in from one appointment to another and you're a little like out of breath and like it's a different energy. Like be there, create the space that you want to create by being intentional about your appearance and being professional with your sound. Tip number 3. Have multiple stories, case studies, strategies in your back pocket for the episode, for the podcaster. So have multiple stories at your disposal, not only your own personal story of your own transformation, of your own journey, but specific stories that are relative to the podcaster's audience experience. So for example, if I'm going on a podcast that's all about new business owners, I'm going to talk about the fact that for a year and a half in my business, I made no money because I had no confidence. Versus if I'm going on a more established entrepreneurship podcast where I'm speaking to people who have an audience and probably have some like 9 to 50 employees or something, I'll probably speak about the pedestal problem that I see with entrepreneurs who struggle with, they've achieved success at this level, and then by achieving that level of success, they're struggling to rise into a greater level of courage and taking more risks because they've gotten to a place of comfort. So I'll speak more into an audience and their current struggles, and I'll use examples from my clients or my examples that I've had from my own business building. So each example is specific to the podcaster's audience. Second, case studies are fantastic because they show you in your zone of genius doing what you do and providing the transformation that you provide in whatever way through your business. So whether that's you provide transformational work as a coach, or you are doing spiritual work or energetic healing or naturopathic work, case studies from your clients can show that your own credibility. Now, with case studies, you either want to make sure that you have the permission from your clients to share certain stories or leave out personal identifiable information so the story can be a vague story and not something that somebody could go on your website and find, oh, I know who this person is who you talked about. Always speak about anybody with respect, with courtesy, and with care. And then always make sure you have strategies in your back pocket that can serve the audience, whether it's, like for me, if I'm going on a solopreneur business startup podcast with that's all about 4 new business owners who are overcoming the confidence and imposter syndromes things, I will speak into maybe heal your money beliefs on how to really work through that, or how to overcome imposter syndrome, or how to cultivate confidence. And then number 4, provide epic value in the terms of having a resource or tool or active tactile thing that the audience can do right after the podcast. So a powerful thing we learn with our heads, and that's how people are consuming. We experience with our hearts, and we take that experience into practical application with our hands. So if you have a journaling exercise, a downloadable PDF, a workbook, a worksheet, something that you can give the podcaster to then give their audience for free, something that they can do, that allows the audience to then be drawn into working with you. You can build your list from that. You can build your customer base from that, but it also provides them with a tool, a resource that keeps your podcast memorable and epic. I remember I was listening to Manifestation Babe's podcast. I love her podcast. She's amazing. And she gave one tactile journal exercise to do. And I did this 3 years ago. And it was a future self journaling exercise. And I did it. And I still remember that exercise to this day because it changed the way that I viewed myself. And because of that, I've been a loyal listener of her podcast for years. And I'll link to her podcast in the description below because she's amazing. And then step number 5 for being an epic podcast guest, ask for feedback. Your most powerful learning tool is the greatest F word of all time, feedback. Feedback gives you the opportunity to learn, to discover, to see how you can improve, how you can grow. I remember I was on one of my clients' podcasts, and he, when I asked for feedback, he said, he was British, and he said, well, you do tend to go on. And I did. I tended to ramble, and brevity was not my specialty. So it allowed me to start practicing speaking with brevity and having beginnings, middles, and ends to my ideas, which made me a better speaker. So I'm so grateful for his feedback on that. And should you like to hear the podcast, of which I do tend to go on, I'll link to his podcast down below as well. So just to recap, step number 1, know what you're talking about and who you're talking about. Step number 2, be mic and camera ready. Number 3, have multiple stories, case studies, strategies at your disposal to share. And step number 4, provide epic tactile value of an exercise, a tool, a worksheet, a workbook, offer to a conversation with you, something that they can book or do to solidify your episode in the audience's mind. And step number 5, ask for feedback from the podcaster. Always be looking for an opportunity to grow and improve because it is through experience that we learn the most. Now, tell me, what tip are you going to take into your next podcast interview in the comments below? And if you want to learn how to profit from not only guest podcasting, but your own podcast, then be sure to get your booty down on the waitlist for Communication Queens. In Communication Queens, you get 8 weeks of group coaching with me, where I walk you through my 7-step framework so that you get set up for success, show up for epic podcast interviews, stand out fearlessly, share your story, serve, sell, and then start your own podcast should you desire. I teach you all how to do that in 8 weeks of working with me. So if that sounds of interest to you, if you want to get booked on more podcasts, if you want to use podcasts as a powerful source of relationship building, marketing, and lead generation so that you get to profit and increase your income and your impact, then definitely get your booty on the waitlist for Communication Queens below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. Hey there, I'm Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and after over 150... Hey there, I'm Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and... Itchy nose, I got an itchy nose. Oh, pause for trash truck. I can hear my son downstairs.